my daughter's now 3. I have this. I made a joke the other day with a friend of mine, about this vision of, imagine you go out on a date with a woman, a first date, and she's really beautiful and the conversation's going really well. You're sitting across her over dinner, and as she's talking, she brushes her hair behind her ear, and she has cauliflower ear, right? And you'd be like, whoa, okay. That is not that I want my daughter to have cauliflower ear, as beautiful as your ears are, my bro. But if she were, I would be very comfortable. I've said many times in this podcast that I want to get my daughter into jiu-jitsu, and I know you're going to be biased, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I don't know if we talked about it. I own a martial arts school, Open Mat MMA in Toronto, but my first school that I launched was a women-only jiu-jitsu academy.
Oh, right.
And it was...
Is that Fight Like a Girl?
Fight Like Girl is the current one. So it was Kimono Girl. I ran that for 5 years. Then I started Open Mat. And then in 2013, and during, with Fight Like a Girl, with Kimono Girl, we ran more than 50 free women's self-defense workshops for over 1,000 women. And when we started Fight Like a Girl in 2013, we also ran, over the next 5-6 years, we ran another 50 free women's self-defense workshops for another 1,000 women. But the whole idea behind Fight Like a Girl was to make free and affordable women's self-defense accessible to every woman in the world by 2030. But we asked, even if every woman in the world knew how to defend herself, why would we accept a world in which she had to? And so we created a partner program, Fight Like a Man, where we'd go to schools and businesses, talk to boys and men about gender-based violence, healthy boundaries, and social change. And there's a whole thing there. But so I'm very adamant. So when I'd either teach these workshops or I'd get asked to speak at schools or at gender-based violence conferences, I'd talk about the 3 reasons I think jiu-jitsu is so important from a women's self-defense perspective. And the last one's maybe the least obvious. So number one, it works. It's been proven to be the most effective martial art when a smaller person is facing a bigger person.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge, isn't it? That's what you want, because physically men are just on average more dominant than females. Males are, that's just the way it works.
And so you need something that actually works.
Yep. And jiu-jitsu is number one.
We could get into why, and some might argue against it, but I'm fairly confident. Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at the evidence, it's very clear. And in fact, for context, the UFC, I don't know if you're aware, the Ultimate Fighting Championships was created by the family that created jiu-jitsu to demonstrate to North American audiences or to Western audiences, because these kinds of fights have been happening in Brazil since the 1920s when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was first created. But no one in North America had seen them. So they knew they had been almost undefeated in thousands of fights.
Wow.
And so the UFC was created by Jorge and Gracie. The Gracie family is the one that created the art, in order to showcase how powerful jiu-jitsu is. And now
they
it's
proved
evolved.
them right, because the jiu-jitsu guys dominated for the first, 10?
Until other people learn jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so now it's become a whole thing, right? But the point is, it shows us what's real. And in fact, I was sharing with this other philosopher, Indy Johar. I was sharing some of the concepts. Like, it was actually, jiu-jitsu was very influential in the design of global unity. And I was sharing some of the strategies that were used to develop. And he said, I think jiu-jitsu had a bigger influence on you than you realize. And I sat with it for a few months, and I realized where he's right is the most important. We could talk about the principles that make up jiu-jitsu and why it works, positioning, this and the most important thing about jiu-jitsu, it has to work. Oh, if they did this, I would do this. Great. Do it 100 times against someone who's actually trying to stop you, and show me what percentage it works. And so that focus on efficacy matters. And so from a women's self-defense perspective, if you want to be able to protect yourself, you better be choosing something that you have confidence actually works.
Consistently working.
So consistently, right? It's like, it's a science, and so number one, reason, it's got to be effective. Number two, what is kind of on the surface most obviously why it's so important. It's the only art that effectively deals with intimate positions.
Well said.
We think of a women's
Wow.
self-defense perspective, women's self-defense situation. We think of what's the worst case scenario? I'm on my back, as say I'm the woman. I'm on my back. Someone's between my legs. If we have to be on bottom, and jiu-jitsu, that is actually the most powerful place you can be.
Dude, I've seen there's this great meme where it says like jiu-jitsu in real life, and there's two guys with a road rage incident, and the cars stop, and then the jiu-jitsu guy, they yell at each other. Jiu-jitsu guys gets out and then lies on his back on the ground and goes, "Now come at me at a reasonable pace." And he's like lying on his back. but so, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and that and jiu-jitsu very rightly in some ways gets made fun of a lot because it does look pretty, silly.
Until someone's choking you out though. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. Yeah. It works, right? Yeah. But if we ever are in those situations, to know what to do, like life-changing, and hopefully we never have to end up there. But and so the fact that it deals effectively with intimate situations that are the ones that we as a community would be concerned about our women having to protect themselves from. That's the second most important reason, the second reason it's so important. The third, and not so obvious, all these like women's self-defense courses you see teach these really powerful techniques, poke them in the eyes, knee them in the groin. That assumes it's a stranger in an alley.
Yeah.
But we know statistically,
it's your partner.
It's actually the person someone knows. And so imagine a girl is at a party with someone she wants to be there with.
Yeah.
And they go upstairs and that person starts crossing a little bit of a line. If the only tools you've given her are to poke out their eyes and knee them in the groin, you've given, she has the right to use those.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't feel that's appropriate, you've actually given her nothing.
She's got nothing.
And so jiu-jitsu, what makes jiu-jitsu so powerful, it's the only effective, non-violent martial art. So say you're at a family barbecue and you have a family member, an uncle who's having a mental health issue, and they start getting violent. If the only tools you have are punching and kicking, what are you supposed to do with someone you care about?
Yeah, you're potentially knocking out Uncle Steve.
And so you don't want to do that. It's traumatizing to everyone around.
Yeah.
If punching and kicking is fire, jiu-jitsu is water. It allows you to control Uncle Steve without hurting him. I have two beautiful examples. One of my instructors, he's not the biggest guy, and he's like 5'3", 5'4". He was on a work trip with his girlfriend and a coworker. The coworker started harassing his girlfriend. He was like, "Dude, stop that." The guy didn't. He kept going. He's like, "Dude, you need to stop that." Kept going. He did all of jiu-jitsu. I have a jiu-jitsu video instructional course, one intro to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then my kind of larger curriculum. But in that we teach all of jiu-jitsu from the most basic to the most advanced level. It's based on one strategy, 3 steps for how a smaller person overcomes a bigger person. He used this so the 3 steps are: 1, you get so close to them, they can't effectively hit you. So you wrap them up. Step 2, you take them to the ground. And step 3, you get to what you might have seen if you've seen the UFC, the mount, where you're sitting on their hips. And from there, you can get a position we call the gift wrap, where you actually wrap their arm behind them. They can't hit you. You could hit them if you want, but importantly, do you have to hit them to control the situation? No. The real power of jiu-jitsu, it gives you choice, the choice to not be violent. And so he was able to hold this guy for 15 minutes without hurting him till the cops came. Another example, that had a paramedic student. There was a guy who was having mental health issues, running around a parking lot. 3 paramedics could not contain him. She used this strategy, took him as a caregiver. She's a paramedic. She can't hurt him. She got him into this position, held him for 15 minutes till the cops came. without hurting it.
Wow.
So our goal with that program is, imagine if every girl you knew had sovereignty over her personal space that didn't require her to be like, you and I are not violent people. So, and most people, one could argue most women don't want to be hurting people, but to give them the ability to control their own personal space.
So empowering, man. It's huge.
So short answer, yes, I encourage you to get your daughter into jiu-jitsu, and she can wear ear guards too.
No, dude, I reckon wear them with pride, because that exact thing you go out on a date as a young lad to a young testosterone fueled lad, and you see a beautiful woman who has a bit of cauliflower ear, you immediately are like, that's like seeing a gun on her hip. You know, that's like, this woman maybe not to be fucked with.
Yeah, I would want to teach her to discern a little more, so that that's not the reason someone's not going to try something with me.
Of course,
like filter for people that are not.
Well, that's a different job of mine.
Not that we can actually choose, right? It's like, sure, that's actually a silly point, because.
But it is a valid point. But it is those situations, as you pointed out. Unfortunately, they can arise. I hope they never do, but I also hope that if it does, she can choose whether or not she wants to break an arm or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.